Hello, it's me. I'm having a bit of a down day today, and I've just had a shower. What time is it? It's like 12:30. Got the washing machine going, and I've had breakfast and washed up. And whilst I was in the shower, as my one, I sort of like do a lot of musing and pondering in the shower, and I've just started delivering. I'm working with a lady called Rose Diamond, and I've just started delivering a short 8-week course on grief, loss. Well, it's called Sitting with Death and Choosing Life. And it's a series of inquiries. And the first inquiry, I have no idea where this call's going, so I might cry. Anyway, to get back to that point, this inquiry, that self-inquiry was one of the explores that we could do on this course that I'm facilitating. And it got me to thinking around how I've always been interested in me, what's inside of me, in my thoughts, in my feelings, and that sort of deep inquiry work that I reckon a whole host of people on my timeline are also interested in, you perhaps being one of them. What is it that makes me operate in the world like I do? And of course, through the years, I've collected theories, and I've sort of like dug around, and I've experienced differences, and I can see changes in the way that I've behaved as I've got older, and linking it back to being a little chick when I was first born. That when you pop out and everybody thinks that you're wonderful and all goo goo, and like they chuckle you under the chin and they think you're lovely, and then you hit sort of like 2 or 3 and you become a pest or a pain in the bum, that sort of thing. So looking at all of that, and how over the years, I've had to fight myself, and this is what I'm seeing now. It's this fighting inside of myself that to be who I really, it's almost like I'm in this container that I've gathered over the first 40 years of my life, maybe, that there's a sort of a fight going on inside of me around how to take off that container. And so one of the ways that I've done it is through this self-inquiry, this deep digging into who I am and how I operate in the world. And I've always had that interest, and I'm sort of surprised that other people aren't of that same interest. It's like I'm an explorer. How people used to go to Africa and they used to explore the unknown, the sort of external unknown. People have gone up into space, and people have gone down to the depths of the oceans, like looking to see what's out there. Well, I've gone to the other way. I've gone, what's in here? That sort of, let's have a look and see. And I always remember as a kid, I always remember sort of thinking, why do I not like that? Why? I'd always curious around what was under my stones, and under the stones, those, let's have a look under the stones, and in my cupboards, and this self-inquiry. And I've had people, I suppose the fight came because I didn't think it was okay to be that so introspective. People would say to me some things like, it's very self-indulgent to spend that much amount of time in digging around in yourself. And when I first heard that, I thought, it sort of blew me away. And that part of me that wants to fit in and doesn't want to be different, I sort of like struggled with not making myself wrong for being so introspective. And still, even today, I'll get people who will say to me, God, you think a lot. You're always bloody analysing everything. Can you just stop? And it challenges that part of me that thinks, oh, I'm doing it wrong, and people don't like me doing it like this, And so little by little I've thought, and I've had some backup from people that I bet, and I used to say to myself, I bet Einstein never had anybody telling it. Those great thinkers, the people who, like you find a saying that you want to say, and then you go hunting, maybe, or maybe it plops into your lap of some wise elder like Einstein or Gandhi, or somebody said it, and it sort of backs up. You see, look, see, somebody else thinks like me. Almost like I have to authenticate and validate and reference and evidence that, you know, I could be right with this. You know, it's so funny. So I guess that, you know, there's still a smidge of that when somebody says to me, you're too reflective or too thinking, analysing. I suppose it was analysing that I got. So you analyse everything, Sunday. And I thought, yeah, and I love doing it. It's a bit like a scientist would. You know, I consider myself to be this explorer into the humanness of Sunday, this thing that I'm in. And then, of course, I share it, and I think, and other people say, oh, that's me too. And I think, oh, you see, we're all very much the same. And maybe I'm just one of the ones who dare to say it, you know, because I was thinking in the shower, which is a commonplace for me to think, that this sense, because I believe that we're sort of tribal, that we want to be in groups, that we want to be included, that there's safety in group numbers. And I started to think, you know, so when we lived in caves and we were sort of that sort of tribe, I can imagine that, maybe this isn't true, but it's something that it popped into my head, that if you were actually exposed any sort of feelings, like negative feelings, or... Because I think to be included, you had to be healthy. If you weren't healthy, I think you were probably left. I remember watching that film. Do you remember that film? I've forgotten the name of it, where the elder squaw, what was his name? Blonde guy, Rich, no. And it was, he did this awful ceremony. It was, in the film, he landed himself into some Native American, I have to be careful because I would used to say Red Indians, Native American tribe. It's a film, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he has to do this salute to the sun, or ceremony to the sun, where he gets these eagle claws in his chest and he's chained up and he has to hang from the middle of the teepee. It's quite, apparently it was banned as some sort of initiation into the masculine. And what happened? His wife? One of his friends. What happened to the squaw, the elder squaw, was that when her son, if anything happened to her husband or her son, she was not housed, because the elder squaws were housed with family. So if the family died and she was still remaining, apparently she was just left outside to freeze, and he took her into his tent and shocked the rest of the community, because apparently that was the thing. If you weren't left, if you were old and you were left without anybody. Now, it could be story, it could just be story, that, and I don't know if it's true. And I have a sense that if you are injured, ill, emotionally, whatever, you're sort of excluded to some greater or lesser degree out of the tribe, which leads me into this thing of why we hide our feelings, why we hide our realness. Because this morning I felt really off. And I live with Stephen, and I was making some breakfast, and he was asking me, he said, can I ask you a favour? And I barked out a no straight away, and he says, well, that told me, didn't it? And then I realised, in that moment, that I was carrying some sort of upset, angry, fearful energy as a result of events over the past couple of days, where I've, felt let down, or, and I can feel the emotion rising in me now, sort of throat and back of my eyes. And historically, I used to hide all that away. I used to hide my sadness away. I lived in a family where it wasn't okay to cry. I got that, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for. And so in essence, I learned to batten it all down. And there was a lot of ramifications around that. I was carrying all this cocktail of feeling. And feelings, emotions, sensations in the body, if you tell somebody to, that enough, you sort of cut yourself off from all sorts of feelings. And feelings for me are sort of indicators that something is lovely or something isn't lovely, and something needs to be done around it. And so it's a motivational tool, a feeling, for me. Whether that's just to shift some energy out of my body, which is what I did today. So after I realised that I was in a bit of a grump, and a bit of a sad, cross grump, I said that to Stephen, you know, I articulated it, and he's making coffee and I'm chopping lemons and I've got a sharp knife in my hand, which he always pops his eyes out. I've never used. But I said to him, you know, that I'm feeling cross and grumpy, and I'm sorry that you're getting it in the neck. And then he turned round and we looked at each other, and then he hugged me, and I said, and now I'm going to cry. And Stephen knows now, after living with me for so many years, and me working through this cracking this emotional containment that I had, that it's going to be fine in like 20 minutes if I just do this thing that I do. And so it was really lovely to fall into his arms, into that sort of masculine energy, and sort of be held in that small child person that had come out of me, to cry, to sob. And then I came into the front room here and then do me downward dog position type thing, where I'm kneeling and my hands on it, but I did it on the sofa, and you know, like, I just can let this emotion come out of me now, this sort of sobbing. And what I noticed today, because I was witnessing it, it comes out through my heart. I can feel it in my heart. Whatever was in my belly, because it's usually in my belly, this sort of like dread and sadness and crossness and bleh. And it actually does burn out of my heart. And I remember somebody saying, you know, is it the Sacré Coeur? I can't. The flame of the heart, you know, it's like we burn the stuff that we don't need out through the heart space, maybe. But I really did get a sense that that stuff was coming out through my heart. And so, you know, I was thinking about feelings and feeling, you know, like all around the exclusion, and how we don't wear our heart on our sleeve, no matter how much we might say we do, when we're out in the street. You know, those emotions and feelings that come, if we were to be aware of them, I can imagine that they're there 24/7, really. That you can switch into some emotional state. And of course, we love the up ones, don't we? The joy, the fun, the playfulness, you know, and I feel all that in my sort of chest area, that sort of lightness of spirit. And I suppose my feelings of non-lightness sort of sit in the lower part of my body. And you know, this is just an explore that I'm saying now. And you know, how the people that we live with or communicate with, you know, how their ability to be able to hold us in that fluctuation. Because I wasn't always, and I've had some information given to me that I'm unpredictable, that I am not safe, that I am spontaneous, and not in a good way, you know. Because I guess at some point in my younger years, I was living very much through my emotional expression. And so for me, the way that I've made sense of feelings, these sensations, so we have sensations in our bodies that I understand to be feelings. And then to make sense of those feelings, I attach an emotional label through my intellect. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling this because of. And it's this emotion that I'm feeling. And so I'm becoming more emotionally aware of how I deal with this stuff that comes up in me. And so I've enjoyed this explore, this self-inquiry into feelings. And now I realised why I compressed them. I realised why I didn't express them, or some of them, and why I expressed others, because of the structures that I lived in. Some of those expressions were safe and some weren't. So, you know, that's where I started to press down the ones that weren't received. There was, because I wanted to be included. I didn't want to be banished. And then, lo and behold, I get banished in a sense that, you know, I had 3 adult children have estranged from me. So they have banished me. And that fear of not wanting to be banished, wanting to be included, then energetically set it up for me. So I get to deal, this is the way I tell it to myself, that I get to deal with being excluded. being banished, being rejected, all that sort of stuff. For what purpose? So I can explore how I can be enough in myself without needing to be included or have that sense of fear of being abandoned or not belonging. You know, and I wonder if that's everybody's journey at some level, that we all have an invitation through our limiting beliefs and the gaps in ourselves, that we fear being rejected, estranged, abandoned. You know, I just wonder if that's a core wound for everybody. And so my feelings world now, I'm much more in tune with them. I can process them really fast, you know, because I don't squash them down. I recognise now that something's up in the world of Sunday, and not made them wrong, you know, bring them home, bring them nearer, bring them into my sense of loving, open-hearted space, you know, that. And for me, there's just two feeling, emotional, sensational states, which one is fear and the other one is love. And, you know, jealousy and envy sits under fear, and joy and happiness sits under love. And, you know, you can see that if you were to work them up some sort of ladder, all these different emotions, you could attach them to, am I coming from a fear-based place, or am I coming from a love-based place? Love-based. Reminds me of Stevie with her Irish wrist watches the other day. You know, like today, this morning, I was definitely coming from a fear-based place. You know, I'm up against it in some sort of communication level with a number of people, and how to explore doing that, and I see that I have to honour myself as well. If I'm in a fear-based place, I have to say I'm in a fear-based place and look at how to deal with that. And usually it's through a good cry, or a shout, or a bit of a bash with some cushions, or because giving my anger permission to be expressed, and especially if it was attached to a person, that was really hard, because there's a part of me that thinks that energetically I pass that on through the ethers, and maybe I do, and maybe it's okay to be cross with somebody who has done something that I felt hurt and upset by. You know, maybe it's okay for me to, and I think it is, you know, I think we suppress, well, I'll talk about myself, I have suppressed a lot of anger under the disguise of I should be bigger than this and be able to cope with this, rather than saying what you've just done has been really hurtful, you know, and not have it, you know, like push it back to the other person, the person who's trying to give it to me, because it's not okay, you know, sometimes it's just not okay for people to push their anger onto, a bit like I did with Stephen, you know, and I said sorry this morning because I was pushing my energy, my angry energy that had come from somebody else onto him. And, you know, and I've witnessed that a lot. I witnessed this energy, this angry energy, a bit like pass the parcel. So somebody's angry because they've had some sort of event. And I witnessed this this was really interesting, I don't know how to say this. I noticed a mother who was angry about something, shouted at the daughter who was little, who then, this daughter, the mother went out of the room, this daughter then shouted at her brother who was very little, and this little brother then toddled over to the grandma to sink his teeth into her leg. And I just watched this parcel of anger, because it was me, I watched this parcel of anger get passed along this family chain, and then Granny me said, I don't think I want to receive this bite on the leg, no matter how much he'll feel better after it. So I fended him off, and I somehow managed that parcel of, of anger energy in some way that, you know, I transmuted it, whatever you want to call, and sent it begone. You know, I didn't carry it on. Because in the days of old, I would then have passed that on, perhaps to the person who started it off in this particular sense. And can you see how that parcel of energy of angry energy just gets passed on? It happens so much out, you know, like road rage is a really good example of that. You know, somebody's not had a good time at home, they've gone without the breakfast, you know, they get into the car, they're driving to work, a job that they don't like, and they're angry. You know, they've read something in the paper maybe. And so they're peeping their horn, they're sending angry energy to anybody who tries to lever themselves out into the queue, you know. You may have experienced this in yourself. You know, you've got this sort of like, you can just wait, mister, energy going on, you know. And I've had that myself. And then it's catching. It's really catching. You're passing on this sort of angry, a bit like pass the parcel. And who's the lucky one when the music stops, you know, that sort of thing. It's so interesting. So this is me analysing and enjoying myself. So if that makes a little bit of sense, you know, are you passing today? Are you passing on your angry energy parcel, or are you passing on some sort of loving parcel? Or are you in that state of neutrality? You know, that's a funny state, isn't it? I sometimes wonder if that's just numbness, because I think we're supposed to feel. And I think when it feels like there's nothing going on, it could be that we're in a state of numbness, because, to be fair, there's a lot to numb yourself out about, isn't there? You know, who wants to absorb every energy that's going on around you? It's like, if you could see it as colours, wouldn't that be great? I know some people do. They see energy as colours, auras. And if you could see it and you recognised I'm avoiding that one, you know, like you put up maybe a little bit of a block and you think, I just bounce that back, I'm not having that one. Oh yeah, I'll have that one in, you know, like you let that energy in. And it would be great if we could see it as colours. And you can sense people's energy. I know that I can. And maybe you can too. That you can sense somebody's energy. Even before they've walked towards you or into a room. There's something, you know, like if you've got that extrasensory perception. The way they hold themselves, the way they look. And a lot of it probably mask, you know, they're sort of putting on an act, because most of us do. And yet when you go underneath the act, you can sort of sense this person's energy. We think we're invisible, and we're not. You know, like you go out and you watch people and you can sense their energy. You can even sometimes sense how old they are, what job they do, you know. And I used to have a lot of fun doing that with my dad, you know, sort of guess as to where people were going, what they were doing, how many people they lived with, you know, that sort of creating a story around people. And so that's sensing somebody's energy, and whether we choose to take it in or whether we deflect it back, you know, it's a skill. And I think it's really important, because I think I have certainly experienced this, that we experience picking up other people's energies. Like I gave you that scenario, you know, that you pass it on. And to be honest, I really don't want to pass on my angry energy that I've collected from somewhere. I especially don't want to pass it on to Stephen. And I don't want to pass it on to anybody. I'd much rather pass on loving kindness. And so processing it out of my body is really important. And now, when sometimes I visualise this energy, angry energy, leaving my body, and I see it going into the earth, I've now got that sort of imagination to channel it into the earth, because my thoughts are Mother Nature composts things like this down. So giving it back to the earth, back to Mother Nature, back to Mother Earth, she can then compost it down. This is the way it makes sense to me, and transforms it back into some sort of growing energy rather than into some sort of destructive energy. Now I quite like this explore. It sort of, I feel like it serves me to be a channel of loving, energetic love, and yeah, it feels good to be like that. And I recognise that I'm also a channel of the other khaki stuff. And it's my responsibility to discharge that in a safe way. And before, I used to discharge it onto other people, and then I learnt to discharge it onto myself. You know, like my head talk around how I was as a person was horrendous when I was younger. Oh. So, wherever you are in the world today, thank you for listening to my waffles and my ramblings. And yeah, I'm having a soft day. I am going to watch a film called Harry and the Hendersons now. If you've never watched Harry and the Hendersons, it's funny, it's light, it's got a bit of a story and a bit of a moral story to it as well. And I might even watch Paddington again. Paddington 2 is really lovely as well. Nice, soft, loving way to spend my Thursday, which is a little bit dark and a little bit miserable, a little bit rainy, but a day for hot chocolate and coziness. Okay, I love you lots. Take care. Have fun. Lots of love. Bye.